Black Hills Information Security, the leaders in penetration testing and active defense. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to request a quote today. Threat Connect is the industry's most widely adopted threat intelligence platform. Built to unite the people, processes, and technologies across your security team, your organization, and your entire ecosystem of partners. Threat Connect's threat intelligence platform enables your team to collaborate, analyze, and make sense of threat data all in one place. Empower your team towards fast and efficient analysis that leads to decisive action. Transform your entire threat detection and response program today. Claim your free account at threatconnect.com/securityweekly. Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. Mr. Apollo Clark is here with us. And in addition to Mr. Michael Santarcangelo on the lines via Skype, welcome, Michael. Mr. Joff Thayer is here with us as well as we celebrate Cinco de Mayo by doing a podcast and talking about AWS security. Security in the cloud, as it were. A secure cloud.
Protecting your cloud.
Protecting your cloud. But Apollo has the skinny on it. He's got all the technical, juicy stuff. And I'm very excited to hear this. Larry's, of course, still here in studio. And we are going to turn it over to Apollo, who's got his laptop connected to the system. So if you're listening to this, you're going to want to go watch the video because you get to see Apollo do stuff.
And full disclosure, the minute this podcast is done, I am deleting every account possible. On
As
the off chance.
you
on the
should.
Off chance.
Yes.
I will rotate my credentials. So how I'm going to do this.
That's not always rotating.
I mean, I am here servicing Paul and Larry, so.
Wow.
Things happen.
Wow.
Wow. That's what she said.
Things happen is right.
What?
So full disclosure, I am going
What
to be.
time did you guys start celebrating today? My goodness.
Like noontime. We always,
Oh,
we
it's
noon.
Like noontime UK.
Yeah.
5-hour difference, whatever.
Sorry. Go ahead, Apollo.
So the way I'm going to do this, as a good consultant should, I am going to rip off Amazon and just repeat them. So there's that. But I'll give some background on things I've actually seen.
Wait, aren't you a consultant for us?
I am.
Okay, just checking.
So I'm giving away all the industry secrets. Don't worry. I'll bill you for this later.
Okay, great.
It'll even out. Don't worry about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quote Amazon itself, which, again, you can look these up yourself, but I'm going to give you some details and my personal experiences actually doing these things. So first thing, number one, if you have Amazon at all, you're already running it, you're just getting started with it, is enable CloudTrail.
Wait, hold on. So what's the problem we're trying to solve here?
We're trying to make the world a better place.
Okay, other than that, what's the
what are the best practices for making your Amazon distribution secure?
Okay.
Yep.
So you've got a cloud deployment. And this is really like whatever your architecture is, whether you have Linux systems, Windows systems, whatever it is, right? There's hardening steps that you have to do. Now, it's interesting how that's different in the cloud, and that's why I was excited about this segment.
Yeah, so I've been using Amazon Cloud since 2011. So I've been using it for quite a long time. I looked it up online, Wikipedia. Apparently it's been around since 2006. Mm-hmm. The Amazon CLI, however, came out, I believe, December 2010. Mm-hmm. So I was apparently one of the early users for it. It's a great system. If you're used to doing bash, doing things on the command line, scripting things, and you want to use your existing skills as a sysadmin, then this is a great way of doing it, is using the Amazon CLI.
So is this changing your configuration settings in AWS or in your instances or both?
Both.
Okay.
So I broke this down into 3 sections. We have user access. So this is things like the sysadmins, developers, QA, including people in sales and marketing who will want to have access to your Amazon instances. Not so much the servers themselves, but some of the services available from Amazon. How do you configure that securely?
I got it. Yeah. So Amazon offers these whole host of services that if you're on an account, we do this as well at InGuardians, that you log into your AWS account, it's tied to your corporate Overlord account, and you can only access certain features within the AWS cloud services.
Exactly. Next section is setting up the servers themselves and monitoring, which is what most sysadmins are generally considered to be doing. And finally is the network. So how do you lock that down? Because doing the network on Amazon is a little different than doing it bare metal. So the largest deployment I've single-handedly managed was 4 different deployments across 400 servers. And that was me by myself. I've used different tools like Vagrant, Ansible, Terraformer, and these are all open source tools for doing DevOps and managing systems. What I'm going to show
Throw
you,
Puppet and Chef in there too. For
Yep, Puppet and
those are
Chef.
both Ruby, which is why I like Ansible because it's Python.
Exactly. Another one too, SaltStack for good things about. Yeah, so that's the thing too, is if you're doing bare metal, generally going to be running things like ESX, QEMU, et cetera, et cetera. If I remember correctly, I think Amazon is running a highly customized version of ESX under the hood. What's unique about Amazon is that they made a really nice, clear and concise command line to interface with it. Now, it may seem like a minor thing from a technology perspective, but what they did was they made the CLI very easy to use. So I'm going to give you a brief, quick tech interview or tech introduction to how to use the Amazon CLI. It is a complicated beast. There's, 55 different services here, thousands of different endpoints you can call, but I'm just going to show you the basics and kind of give you a sense of how the system operates. And then after that, I'm going to go through the top 25 things that I consider to be Amazon security best practices. So let's get started. So you can see here I'm logged in to my Amazon account, and I'm going to pull up my command line terminal here. So if you want to, go ahead and type sudo pip install AWS CLI. When this runs, you'll see that, I already have it installed, so not that worried about it. You can go ahead and run upgrade if you wish. I'm not going to do that for now for time purposes. And after you create your account, you can go into Identity and Access Management, IAM, and this will list all of the user accounts, groups, security policies, etc. So you can see I basically wiped out my account. There's only one person here, which is my A. Clark. When you go into this, you'll have what's known as security credentials. This right here is my access key ID. I don't care if you know this. I'm going to rotate this after the show, but you don't know the secret key. So create your Amazon account, create a new user, create a security access key, install Amazon CLI, and you're ready to go. So let's go to the Amazon CLI and see what we can do. So I've already started up a few instances earlier today. So we type in AWS EC2 describe-instances. Takes a few seconds to run, and this will return back a JSON list of all of your servers that are running and how they're configured. So I'm not going to show you the full output of this one. It's a huge JSON object, it's like 2 kilobytes. By default, Amazon CLI uses JSON as the output format. So one of the things you can do to every command from Amazon CLI is type -- output JSON. And this will ensure that the output comes back as JSON. There's also 2 other formats available. One of them is table,
I was just going to ask you what those other output formats were.
Oh, yes. So table, this looks similar if you ever use things like MySQL or Postgres. This is human readable. This is not easy to parse, though, if you're trying to run this through regex. So that's where the whole text format comes in. So -- output text. And this is all tabbed eliminated. So you can go ahead and count your tabs, and you can see, you can use things like cut and say, I want the 5th column of every row, and there you go. You can save it to a file, do whatever you want. So now we have a list of all the instances. So let's go ahead and filter these down a little bit and say, okay, -- filters, and they do a key value pair. So they say name is equal to instance - state - name, values is running. So let's get a list of all of the Amazon instances that are running, not the ones that are terminated, stopped, broken, whatever. You run that, and obviously the output is a huge JSON blob. So let's use another command you can use against every query, which is -- query. And if you look at the JSON object, if you ever do basically JavaScript, how do you reference a JSON object? It's an array, associative array, so you can have a certain nested structure to that. Using the query command allows you to say, give me this small subsection of the massive JSON object. So what I'm going to do here is say, give me a list of reservations.instances.instance ID. So these are all the different instances I'm running. You can see their unique IDs here. So you can see I'm running 3 instances.
Isn't there a command line JSON is it JQ?
JQ.
JQ.
Yep. So that's what I was going to go to next. Is you can do all this stuff. You can do it on the command line. You can futz around with the output on text and cut, but it's a lot easier to.
I was going to say JQ is if you get JSON output, JQ is definitely the way to go.
Exactly. So JQ again, open source, completely free, great tool, and it allows you to do things like the query on the command line like this using native AWS, but it's a little more robust.
Yeah.
So I like using that. So you can see here I'm doing AWS EC2 describe instances. I'm piping it over to JQ. And you can see here the format for the query versus JQ. It's very, very similar. We run that. You can see it's a little cleaner. You know, we don't have the brackets, a little nicer to work with. Let's see. So that's for instance IDs. What the real power comes out of these things is when you say, you know, I want to get the instance ID and the public DNS. So boom, there we go. To do this with just the -- query command on the AWS CLI is kind of a pain. So using JQ, really simple and easy. And again, don't worry if you can't keep up with all these commands because this is going to be in the show notes. So go ahead and, you know, when you're under span time, go ahead and copy and paste it. Really quick and easy. And here is the creme de la creme. This is saying I want a list of all of the instances that are running, all instances that are set as running, not stopped, terminated, and give me the public DNS name. Boom, there you go. This is my magic trick when I join a new project. Because one of the first things, you know, you guys all talk about this. Every single time you talk about, you know, joining a new project, I've heard Joff mention this so many times. He literally mentioned it last week. Give me a list of all your servers. Can you list all the servers?
And they forget some.
This command, congratulations. This literally has blown away my clients in the past. You know, saying, hey, I talked to security guys and I'm like, hey, could you give me a network diagram? Maybe kinda. We got this thing from like 3 months ago, hasn't been updated. Okay, could you give me a list of all your servers? Well, I don't know, maybe kinda. You run this one command, you're golden. Now, full disclosure though, this will only work per Amazon account. So a common practice I've seen is customers having multiple Amazon accounts. Now, the reason they do this is for data segregation. So if you have an enterprise customer and they want data segregation, having completely separate Amazon accounts, there is no way they can access them between accounts.
Now,
that is so funny you say that. We both know, or most of us know, they're doing it because of inefficiency and lack of coordination.
Yep.
And then later on, they go, why do we have 17 different Amazon accounts? Someone goes, shit, data segregation.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I've been part of those teams where like, hey, we're taking 3 months to get a new instance. Let's open another
Yeah,
Amazon
exactly.
account.
We'll do it ourselves.
I've been
The
there.
other one, will it also work cross data center? So you can have instances spun up in multiple regions?
Yeah, so I'll get to that at the end.
all right.
How to actually set up multiple regions across the world and sub-networks within regions.
Got it. Okay.
So that'll be the network section towards the end.
Cool.
So there you go. This is the basics of how Amazon CLI operates. You have the function, which is AWS, or the command AWS. You have the subsection, in this case EC2, and then you have an action, some kind of verb you're doing: describe instances, create instance, run instance, delete instance, and then you have a few values you either set, you can query, and you can filter the output. That's it. Like, there's no magic sauce here. There's no massively complicated configuration files to pass in. You can do that. You can pass in a massively complicated JSON object if you choose to, but you don't need to. You can do everything on the command line. It's beautiful. So now that we have that going. The big thing that I just mentioned, number one, is if you are using Amazon CLI or just using Amazon in general, you should have a log of every single action performed within that account. If somebody's spinning up an instance, you should know who, when, and where. Hopefully you can know why.
That comes to the discussion afterwards,
That's
right?
discussion afterwards. At the very least, you can audit these things. And yeah, if you're doing large corporations, obviously they usually have an audit trail. You know, PCI compliance, I believe, does require things like, you know, deployment, like a deployment process and auditing for it. This would fill that requirement. So we have.
Hey, so just to interrupt you a second, Apollo. I don't know whether this is true for everybody else, but I hope not. Your video is really pixelated from my perspective.
That's just you, Joff.
It could be just me. That's fine. I just want to make
The
sure
Skype
that
guys also sound kind of quiet in my headphones. I don't know if that's just me or not.
that's because you're going deaf.
Are
What?
the voices in your head louder or quieter than us?
About the same level.
All right. Well, I think you're okay then.
Hey, it could be just me. I just want to make sure that we're sending out a good signal for our fans. You know.
Hope so.
No, yeah, Joff's got a different video feed. You carry on, Paul.
Okay, so AWS CloudTrail. AWS CloudTrail allows you to audit all of your actions. It's great. And what it does is every time you perform an action either on the CLI or within Amazon itself on the web interface, it creates a log and it sends that to S3. Really stupidly simple. That's it. So the way we set that up is AWS CloudTrail. And for the first one we're going to do is describe trails. In other words, what do we have for trails? So you can see here I've removed my trails. There's nothing there. Next up, I have AWS S3 LS. So this is for the S3 buckets. So you can see here I have one, which is from my photo trips. I kind of back up my raw photos on Amazon. So here is how we create this first. AWS CloudTrail, create dash subscription, dash dash name, in other words, name for the CloudTrail. We're going to call this AWS log. S3 new bucket, we're going to call this AWS log 2016. And this will go ahead and create a CloudTrail and configure the bucket for us. And you can see here, boom, there we go. Gives us back a nice JSON object. And you can see here, we're monitoring US East 1. Log file validation is not enabled. It's not multi-regional, but it is running. So that's really all it takes. If you can run this one command, you can monitor all of your AWS actions. That's it. So if you want to get a list of the CloudTrails, again, you can use cut, output text. Yay, here's the trail that I made, yay. You can get the trail status to confirm that it is running. So get trail status dash dash name, in this case AWS log. Give it a sec. There we go, last delivery time is logging true. Yeah, that's it. And now if you go on to the website, because you can do the website and the CLI, FYI. Don't think you have to do one or the other. You can go into CloudTrail, and you'll actually start seeing the actions which I was running earlier. Boom, there we go. There it is. Everything I've done in the past 24 hours is logged to CloudTrail.
How convenient.
I know, right? The beauty of the cloud, because it's all centralized. So it's all going through, one central authority when you do it this way. Under the hood, it's actually using Python and this library called Bato. It's basically just HTTP REST requests. So if you want to sniff your own traffic, you can find that out. So that's the basics of how Amazon CLI operates. It's really not that hard, actually. It's not crazy config files, no YAML, and all this crazy stuff. So, all right, number 2, use AMI users and not the root user account. So if you do everything in Amazon as the root user, it's like running sudo on your servers. Thing's going to break. Something bad's going to happen, okay?
Okay.
You don't want that. You don't run your Apache user and your MySQL user as root.
What?
Exactly. Same thing when you're running on Amazon. Make a new admin user.
Wait,
which you saw.
So you shouldn't do this as root?
Make a note. Make a note. Make it.
I gotta go.
So
I got something to fix.
You gotta go update a course, Larry.
Yeah, I gotta go update a couple of Amazon instances. I mean,
next up, this is basic security hygiene. Use least privs. Do the salespeople need to be able to start and stop server instances? I would say no. The salespeople do, however, need to see the billing instructions and the billing information. So kind of figure that out. I generally do about 5 levels of user permissions. I do one for the sysadmins like myself, ops admins. Then I do ones for developers. And the developer ones are usually more getting information, saying what are the servers instances, what is the IP address, what is the CPU usage, things like that, but not necessarily letting them create and delete. Again, that's more of a personal thing, depending on how much you not necessarily trust your developers, but are willing to take that risk and, see how things go. Then for the salespeople and also finance, I give them access purely to the billing systems. So those are my three tiers. You can do obviously more than that. I've seen 10 tiers if you really want to. Depends on your organization. Next up is same with how do you administer users effectively. You have to use groups. So if you go into IAM, you have users, you have groups, you have roles, and you have policies. So groups, again, are user groups. That's it. Policies, these are interesting. AIM has 2 types of policies. You have the policies that are pre-built from Amazon, which you can see here, a lot of them going in here. And you also have ones that you can create yourself. So you can use Amazon's ones or you can make them your own. What's interesting, they call these managed policies on Amazon. If you use a managed policy, it may change in the future. So that's kind of something you need to decide. Do you want to give up some of that flexibility and that responsibility to the Amazon staff to say when you come out with new functionality, do you want to automatically enable these roles to use that functionality?
Nice.
So it's kind of nice, you kind of offload that burden.
What's some of the functionality they come out with, Apollo? I mean, give us some guidance on whether that's a good thing to enable, or you should review it first.
That's the catch, is it really comes down to, how much time do you personally want to spend administering these things? If you have hundreds of policy floatings around, go with the Amazon defaults. So let's say, for example, this is kind of a weird example, but on S3, one of the things S3 released a few years back was the ability to say, I want to make this folder publicly facing as a website. Basically like an FTP server, effectively. If you gave someone S3 administrative access, they could enable that. So the question is, do you trust the granularity of the policies they've defined? So if you look through the naming here, they're usually pretty concise. You have things like blah, 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 full access, blah, 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 describe, blah, 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 read only. So I'd say they're pretty good. But again, personal discretion, totally your choice. So you can do custom or managed. Easiest thing in the world, enable a strong password policy. That's quick and easy. You can literally go here, I think it's under account settings. Yeah, here we go. You can enable 12, 16, whatever you want, uppercase, lowercase. This is real easy. Literally, you click a bunch of buttons, and the command line for this is even easier too. It's like, these 10 flags, that's it. So having strong policy passwords. The big thing too here is rotating the credentials. Now, this is different than rotating passwords, because in order to use Amazon CLI and perform actions on Amazon, you need to use credential accounts, not just logins. You can log in as a user and have no ability to do anything at all. So that exists. So when you give people credentials, one of the things that I have heard, never seen myself, is that potentially a developer could be reusing passwords from the database to Amazon account. That happens. And by extension, the attacker has access to their permissions on Amazon. However, if you rotate those accounts once a month, once a week, potentially, then that is a limited time frame window. Now, the script to actually rotate the credentials is actually really simple. If you go on my GitHub page, it's literally like 5 lines of bash. Literally, it says, go to this user, get a list of their credentials, delete all of them, make them a new one, and if you want to be really fancy, you email it to them.
Ooh.
Yeah, email them the output. But
So is that I mean, that's the difference between authentication and authorization?
Exactly. So authentication in this Amazon context is just being able to log on to the website. That's it.
So what do they get at that? Can they see? Can they view? I mean, do they have any access at all?
No, by default.
Or
if I made,
not access, any authorization?
Yeah, authorization. So if I made a brand new user and didn't attach any policies to them, literally all that they can see is the homepage. That's it. They can't actually see anything. So, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. So when you rotate it, what is that effectively doing?
That is rotating the secondary credentials they use to actually run the Amazon CLI. Different credentials for that. Website login and then Amazon CLI login.
Okay, so it's not as simple as it's not renewing an authorization.
Nope.
It's almost like changing keys behind the scene.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like giving a new token.
That's really clever.
Yeah, it's pretty nice how they did that. So I'm going to run through these a little bit. Enable MFA, enabling MFA. You can do this on the command line. It's kind of messy. I personally prefer to do this for the users and let them say, okay, here's your account, here's your temp password. I've set it up to require you to make a new password, and please set up MFA. And then
what do they use for MFA? What are your options?
I like to use Google Authenticator. You can use Google Authenticator, Duo Labs, a bunch of them out there.
Okay.
Literally, all you do with your smartphone is scan a QR code. That's it.
Yep, solid.
There's that. Remove all credentials, blah, blah, blah. All right, here's the fun part, servers and monitoring. First things first, I just mentioned this earlier, is enumerate all your servers. I showed you the command to do that. If you don't know what's out there, you can't defend it. Next up is tagging instances. I've come into situations where I've seen a bunch of servers, like hundreds of servers, and the names were completely non-descriptive. 2015 DB. Well, which one of the 5 deployments? I have no idea. So I usually do
DB1 or DB2
exactly.
or DB3.
Exactly.
Server 1, server 2.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, it's terrible. So giving a name to a server, the namespace, I think, is only 64 characters, and even that's not enough sometimes. So I usually do at least 2 tags. Deployment type, is this dev, QA, testing, a certain customer type, enterprise customer type? What is the role of the server? Is this a database, a web front end, message queue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? If you have those 2 tags at least, you can do a lot. So that makes things administration a lot easier, and it's completely free and easy. Next up, this is something I highly suggest for everyone, even if you're a small startup, set up a VPN. Because what you can do is saying, instead of giving the firewall rules to have SSH access to everyone, we're going to require you to be on the VPN. So that way the VPN itself becomes a bottleneck that is heavily monitored. So we can at least know SSH access is coming through the VPN, and the VPN is heavily monitored. We can at least know who, when, where, all that. And VPNs,
it's heavily monitored. Is there a performance penalty for that?
Not really. I mean, it depends on who the VPN provider is. I would actually just personally suggest not running your VPN in Amazon. I would suggest coming from an outside source.
Yep. Yep.
And then in your firewall rules, setting it up to say, we will allow port 22 SSH from this one IP address. So you have to be on the VPN in order to even talk to the servers. So.
Okay.
Next up, enable resource monitoring. This goes back to just standard ops situations. A really good service called CloudWatch Metrics. This allows you to monitor CPU, memory, disk space, network in, network out, data transfers, basic VM level kind of things. You can also monitor things inside the VM like disk space usage and memory usage. Next up is monitoring system logs. So there's a service called CloudWatch Logs. This allows you to look at things like service level OS level logs, SSH logs, login logs, service level logs, Apache logs, PHP, MySQL, Postgres error logs, as well as your custom application logs. All right, next up is if you have all of these in CloudWatch logs, you automatically get access to do alerts. You can set up preconditions and say, if you see this text string in the log or see this situation happening, like the CPU spiking over 50% for more than 5 minutes, send me an email or send me an SMS on your text phone. Next up is automating patching and updates. Again, this is best practice in security. Amazon doesn't necessarily do this for you automatically, but if you're using it, use a tool like Ansible, Puppet, Chef, SaltStack. Next up, back up your databases. So Amazon has a bunch of database services known as RDS, and a lot of these have cron jobs that are automatically set up every once a week, and they'll back up your database into S3. So really quick and easy on how to do all that. Next up, networking. Configure all of your servers to use a VPC. A VPC is basically a private VPN on Amazon. These servers, by default, when they're launched, are not publicly accessible. VPC is different than what Amazon used to be doing until I think about 2 years ago, known as EC2 Classic. EC2 Classic, all of your servers are online, publicly facing. With VPC, you have to be inside the VPC in some manner to access them. Or you have to very explicitly say, give this Amazon server instance a public IP address. Next up, restrict your IP usage, your CIDRs, based on use case. This is just a general, it's the same thing as if you're running a data center. You're going to say, this block of servers is databases, therefore they're going to have this IP range, good to go. Use strict firewall rules. If you put in 0001 for your CIDR, you better mean it. So, yeah, I've seen that a lot for OpenSSH. Anyways, use auto-scaling groups. This is where Amazon really comes into power. When you can dynamically launch more instances of your database, of your web server, based on performance. So what's really cool is when you start doing this, your network becomes like a living creature. It becomes like a piece of, like a car, like a clock, where the system will dynamically scale based on your server load. This could be things like the amount of network traffic coming in, CPU usage, memory usage, etc. And you can configure these, but you can only effectively do them if you have things like resource monitoring through CloudWatch Metrics and log aggregation through CloudWatch Logs. Next up, this is one that you asked me earlier, Larry, is scaling across multiple zones. This comes down to the business. If you're running a business in the East Coast versus the West Coast, scale accordingly. If you're running something in Europe, scale it in Europe. Best practice I've heard and tried to do too is, even though you may be a West Coast-based company, have an extra data center in Canada, just in case. That may be that weird one day where, for whatever reason, because this has happened. This does happen on Amazon. Amazon does crash. It's very, very rare. It's usually very quick. But do you want to lose your business for 2 hours because something happened in Amazon?
Nope.
Well, a lot of them are actually usually restricted based on zones. So have more, even if you only have business in one section of the world, have a secondary backup. And then from there, scale the amount of servers you have per region based on the business requirements. Next up is
Hey, you almost done because we're running short on time now.
Yep, so 2 more left.
Okay.
Use elastic IPs. This is all fine, well and good. If you're running 300 servers, how do you manage the IP space? You're going to, most of the time, if you have a strict CIDR block that says, okay, this CIDR block is -24, so we have plenty of space for the servers, but a lot of time you don't need to know every single server. You need to know what the master nodes are. Where's my master Postgres? Where's my master Node.js system? And that's where you can use elastic IPs. Elastic IPs are an IP address that is static, but can be dynamically reattached to other server instances. So that individual master node may go down over months, but you can at least know if I go to this address, I can always talk to the master Postgres instance. So really good. Next up is load balancing. So if you see something crashing, definitely put things behind a load balancer. And load balancers are Amazon's systems. They're basically kind of like a reverse HTTP proxy, if you will. I think there's a VPN tunnel in some instances, for some regards. These allow you to say, okay, we can at least handle the incoming traffic and not have to worry about it. And we can set up things like really basic round robining. So if you have 5, 10 web interface instances, you can have the load balancer set up from Amazon automatically and have it round robin. And it's quick, easy. You can reuse the firewall rules. It's awesome. Finally, do your stress testing. Load balancers are very useful, but if you don't have auto-scaling groups, you don't have monitoring set up, then things are still going to fall over. If you just say auto-scaling, give me 10 servers, auto-scaling will do that. But if you exceed that usage, then things suck. And it's better for you to, mess up your own system today than wait for your customers to do it on you accidentally tomorrow. So those are my top 25 tips.
Thank you, Apollo. With that, we're going to take a short break, come back and do our stories of the week. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Thanks, Apollo.
Thanks, Apollo.
Sorry for rambling.
We got started late too.
Fucking brain on Apollo.
All right, guys, we're really short on time for stories, so we need to cut really fast.
So how long did that run for? Was that half an hour? Was that 35?
No idea. You
It's
said
it's
20
about
minutes.
30. It was
Clearly a
about
lie.
35.
One fucking drink, kids. That's how long it was. Come on.
Actually, yeah, the light